Welcome to special episodes of the Two Girls with Grief book club. We might laugh or we might cry, but we always read.
The book club where every month we read grief stories, both real and fiction. This episode is a condensed version of our book club featuring Jessica Fein's Breathtaking, a memoir of family, dreams, and broken genes.
Yeah, so Jessica has a blog called Grace and Grief. She also has her own podcast, I Don't Know How You Do It, ? And she also serves on a board of directors of Mito Action, an education and advocacy group for mitochondrial disease. So, Rachel, what were your thoughts reading this book?
I thought, first off, I thought it was just like an easy read, but also really relatable in so many ways. I had the chance to speak with her. A few weeks ago and learn a little bit more about about her story, and I feel like we just connected so much on the amount of grief.
Yeah.
It's very similar experiences of just like it can't get worse, but it does, and still trying to like find happiness and just getting wrapped up into it. Hers was a really long journey. Obviously, it was different in the case of that it was her daughter. And that's just a different situation. And it was a disease that is very rare, extremely rare. There's not much known about it. Obviously, there's unique elements to that, but I definitely related to just a lot of the different elements and themes in this book for sure. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think for like I don't know, like a trigger warning, but also spoiler, like if you don't want to know some of the, I don't want to say plot twist when it's like actually somebody's life, but you know, she ends up losing her older sister pretty early on in the novel, and then throughout the story of her and her daughter and this really heartbreaking journey of navigating the medical system and trying to learn more about this rare degenerative disease. She also loses her mother and her father and her other sister, and you're just like, can this woman not get a break? Oh my god. And meanwhile, all of that, and she's still trying to be a wonderful 100% mom to not only her daughter but her two other children that she has at home. I'm astounded. I was really impressed by her as like one, an author, but then two, just like her character as a person. I really like the raw honesty of like sometimes we get these selfish thoughts, I think, when we're one, caregivers, but then two, while we're grieving, and she doesn't shy away from like the realities of these like real honest human thoughts and feelings that people have. And I really appreciated that she shared all that and just put her life out there for people to relate and connect to. So yeah, the book, I agree, super easy to read. Like you and I were saying, we were like racing through it. Man, does it pack a punch, like emotionally, because by the end I was like, oh, my heart is being ripped out here.
Yeah, it was a lot. And I think what you did mention was her mentioning like the different times that she just was tired and exhausted, and it's like she wanted, I don't even think it's necessarily fair to say like selfish. I think that's a hard thing because we both experienced it. It's like you also still want to live your life. Like you don't want to miss out on everything, and when you have a family member that has to go to the hospital all the time or a loved one, it is really hard because the world is spinning by and you're just like in a hospital, and you lose track of time, you miss out on holidays and other events and just being outside. You miss a lot of things, and I think it's just fair as a human to want to be there for your loved one, but at the same time not miss out on life. And I think that's not talked about enough. I feel like people are so quick to judge for people that have those thoughts or just want to still enjoy life as much as they can, and I don't think that's fair. And also I feel like the people that say that are not the people that are at all experienced it, because it's so easy from the outside to be like, oh, I would never do that. It's like, would you? Have you spent months in the hospital at the time watching your loved one with tubes inside of them, not being able to talk? Like, have you experienced that? Because if you haven't, you really need to not talk about that. And I think people are like so quick to judge on those things. And it's just really hard to be dealing with that. And you're not even the one that's sick, but it's just hard. You still have to give up a lot. So I appreciated that she mentioned that so many times. So, like there was parties or just times that they were tired. And I mean, and her daughter's case was so extreme. They had
Yeah.
to everything they had to do for her. She couldn't dress herself. She couldn't talk anymore. She had tubes. They had to like clear her throat. Like, so much stuff. That is such a heavy burden on people. And thankfully, like she had the most supportive people around her, her parents, her siblings, other family members.
Her husband is like
Yeah.
5 stars.
Yeah. Her husband gets the 10 out of 10 rating. And I think we talk about that. It seems rare. I hopefully it's not as rare as it appears to be. Also, I think you see so many stories of when kids get sick, people get divorced. Like that becomes an issue because it's like one parent won't want to do it. But I appreciate that she never she never saw that difference. Because
Yeah.
like they were adopted and that was her child. I remember I think early on she mentions they wouldn't have signed up for a sick kid, like, had they had known, but she's glad that she didn't know
Mhm.
because she's like, "We were meant to be, this is my daughter." But given the choice, she's like, "I don't know what I probably would have said no." And I
Yeah.
think that's such a real, honest take on that. It's so hard to take on that, but thankfully Dahlia also got the right parents. She got the family that loved her unconditionally and supportive siblings and parents and everything. I feel like she ended up with the right family that just loved her till the end and was there for her.
Like, that's very apparent in the book that there's this love parents have for their kids that knows no bounds. Like, they clearly went to the ends of the earth to do whatever they could for her.
Yeah, I think another big part was when her dad passed away
Oh,
and
yeah.
how she mentioned that just like her dad was a person that showed up even when he was not in great health himself. Like I think she said that he came in the middle of the night, but he had to be wheelchaired to go see them. And that part, like, I feel like really hurt my heart, like, of just how hard that is to lose the support you have, because it is really hard to be dealing with that for sure in that situation. And then it's like the person that's one of the people that's main like supports you, like that's just your dad trying to love you and support you is gone. And I could just through the pages, I could really feel her pain of losing her dad and just that extra safety net of someone having your back when you're going through something hard. And you're not perfect. No one's perfect during the situation. So it's like your dad just loves you through it all. And that part really got me. I was like, and also the fact that I feel, I mean, she lost siblings throughout the process, but I've had that where it's also like your support system starts to dwindle when you lose more people. And it just makes it that much harder because then it's like the people that you go to aren't here and you're already going through a hard thing. So I related to that as well. Obviously, I have no kids. I I only have a dog, so I can't relate to the aspect of that. But I I definitely felt that connection of just like losing your support system and how bad that feels. How that just kind of loses your whole like equilibrium of life because it's like the people that support you that are there for you aren't there anymore. So that was like a big theme for me that really stood out.
Yeah, and there she has a moment when her dad has already passed, and she's like, "I'd call my dad because, regardless, he always picked up and told me it was okay." Like, every flight she went on, she called him because she's like, "I'm an anxious person, and no doubt, like, after all this, I get why." But she was like, "It's just nice to know that even if it doesn't feel like things are okay, you have someone to tell you it's gonna be alright." And sometimes that only just feels assuring from someone who is looking after you and, like, cares for you full-heartedly.
Yeah, this story, I think there were so many beautiful moments
Mhm.
in it. I feel like other things that stood out was just Dahlia's resilience and how she consistently mentioned like Dahlia touched everyone that she met, and everyone that got a chance to be with her loved her and loved her spirit and was, like, obsessed with her, and she was so worried about how people would perceive her daughter because especially as her
Mhm.
daughter's, like, couldn't talk anymore and had tubes and all these different things, but she just kept getting surrounded by the right people that loved her and that got it and could see the beauty of her spirit even without the ability to speak to each other. And I thought that was really beautiful that throughout all of that, that Dahlia just had the best attitude through it all. And I thought, yeah, that part just stood out to me because I think it's so hard to do that, especially at such a young age. And you see so many kids that are going through all these different health issues. And I just can't imagine as a kid it's so hard. You don't really understand it. I mean, I think the disease in general isn't understood that well. So I think that's hard for everyone. But I loved just hearing in so many different instances where Dahlia was celebrated by the people around her.
Yeah. I love the moments when, after she has her trach surgery and they have the in-home nurses that are coming around, and I appreciated that Jessica goes into, like, the struggle of trying to find supportive like, a supportive medical team because that is a difficult system to create around people you love, to find people who, like, care, and when they find what's her name? Shauna?
I think so,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and just, like, I love that Jessica brings up moments where, she's just willing to, like, give in to Dahlia's whims because she's just tired. Like, as a mom, she's tired and
Yeah.
she feels bad for her daughter, and she's like, "Just give her what she wants." And then Shauna's, like, treating her like an average, like, 10 or 11-year-old kid, like, "No, you're not getting a phone. You'll get a phone when you're 13. Like, are you
Yeah.
crazy?" And I loved that, like, she shows the importance of, like, needing to treat, Dahlia just like the other kids. Like, she is also gonna act bratty like her brothers, and that's just, like, kid behavior, but I love that dynamic in that relationship and, like, how, Shauna ended up becoming, like, Dahlia's best friend, especially in that time period when she was, like, almost bedbound.
Yeah, I think that was such a beautiful relationship to read about. I think another kind of moment with Dahlia that stood out to me was her giving her bar mitzvah
Yeah.
and how at her brother's, she was kind of the center of attention but that was celebrated. But she was like, "I still wanna give that to her because I don't want her to be left out. I still want her to have a normal life as much as possible." And even though she was really deteriorating kind of towards that time, at least in terms of, like, her ability to move her
Mhm.
body and stuff, like, she still had an amazing time. People they made it work, people stepped in for what she couldn't do, and it was still an amazing celebration. And it seemed from reading that Dahlia really loved the faith and being Jewish and being part of that community. Like she would be front row when they went to I don't know, is it called church sermon? I'm not sure.
Synagogue?
Yeah, well, she just always wanted to sit up front, and I thought that was beautiful that she got to be included in that before she passed away and just get to go through all the traditions and be included. And especially because I think towards the end you see like they don't know how there she was. So I'm glad that like this happened at a time where she could where they still knew like she really enjoyed it and she was very her mind was still very active that she could enjoy that experience and know that her parents did that for her. So I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, I think, as we see this through Dahlia and especially through, like, this, like, immense, obviously life-changing and, like, family family impacting events that are happening to her, that, like, Jessica constantly is bringing up that these are very difficult times and it was very hard on their family, and yet it seemed like collectively they were all still trying to have hope and joy in their lives, and I bring up, like, 2 instances in particular. Jessica mentions, like, sadness and joy dance with each other and perhaps making each other more powerful, but then also after, Dahlia has her trach input and she can't eat anymore. She now has a feeding tube that she goes to like a special school specifically for children in these situations. And Jessica learns that she's going to take a cooking class, and
Oh,
Jessica's
yeah, I
like,
remember this.
she can't eat. Like, this is going to be awful for her. Like, what a slap in the face for her then to come home from her first day of school and just be so elated. And she made her family cookies. And Jessica has this realization that even if she could make cookies, even though she couldn't eat, she still found happiness in that, and that Jessica could find happiness in this whole situation too. And it kind of like, I don't know, it kind of brings it all back around that, like, yes, Jessica and her husband were super like focused on trying to make sure that Dahlia was getting all the medical attention that she could get. Um, but then like spending time with each other and really like appreciating the moment, um, like being a family together in those present moments. And I just thought that was like so like a beautiful reminder, I think, for everybody who's grieving of like it's gonna suck and it's gonna be a slap in the face. But happiness is a choice, and I think like it's one you have to make these little tiny choices every day to want to pursue that. And like it was a good reminder to read about Dahlia and just like I'm empathizing with Jessica, but then I'm also sitting here being like, I can't imagine if that was me. I can't imagine if I was a mother of a child with a degenerative disease, or if I was even Dahlia. And like
Mhm.
my life is just progressing at such an astronomical rate. Like that would be really devastating. I would not have the optimism she had.
Yeah.
I would not be as positive or as strong as she was. Definitely I would definitely have a very different perspective, but it was just really inspiring to know that if this little girl could do it and still just have such a beautiful impact on the people around her, then that like we can all take a little bit of that too.
Yeah, I feel like Dolly was kind of her constant reminder to stop and actually enjoy what was like those moments and those special moments because
Mhm.
she knew that at some point they would end because it was
Yeah.
an uncurable degenerative disease. So I think it was great to see just how many times she's like, "Well, I need to appreciate her laughter and her spirit and her joy and how she affects other people and just these beautiful moments." And I think we all like people that have had family that's sick, it's like you go into this fixer mode, you want to figure out a solution, and sometimes there's no solution. And but that's what kind of keeps you sane sometimes is like thinking about what's the next thing we can try, how are we gonna get better? And you lose sometimes just you lose time, like you forget to stop and smell the roses, as they say.
Yeah.
Like it's hard because you're kind of on this never ending like wheel of just trying to figure things out and you don't come up to get air. And she mentions just how many times Dahlia made her be like, okay, I need to stop because I can't fix everything. And I think that's what we talk about so often is just like you need to find the joy in your life no matter what you're doing. Even if you're caretaking, you know, you need to still have time for yourself. You need to somehow do something for yourself. You know, it's not I don't think it's good for anyone to be 100% in service of anybody because it's
Mhm.
like you still have to live your life and it's not always easy. It's it's not easy to get away when you're helping someone and taking care of them, but
Yeah.
I just think we no matter the situation, you deserve some time to yourself, you know? And obviously it's not easily done or taken, but I liked just kind of the honest takes of just her like I need to find joy in these moments. I need to experience things when I can. And, you know, like you never know what life's gonna throw at you. This book shows that there are so many different things that come at her, you know, whether the cancers and the sickness and the whole main time her daughter's going through this sickness and getting worse through the chapters. So I think it's a reminder like you can't control what's gonna happen, but you can't let those things stop you from being like 10 years have passed. I don't know what happened in my own life. You know, and I've definitely experienced times like that where I'm like, I don't remember things. I feel like it's a blur. I don't know what I did for myself during that time. And yeah, I just feel like we all deserve me time. We all deserve that like self-care, that joy. So I thought that was a good thing that kind of keeps coming up in there in the story or in her memoir.
Yeah, it definitely reminded me this book really took me back into, like, the hospital rooms when
Yeah.
my dad was in the hospital, and it really it's sad to go back into that place, I think, mentally, but it's also just reassuring that someone else has felt this before. All these, like, unique thoughts that you have, kinda like she brings up, like, you go into, like, this time warp in hospitals where it's like, they dim the lights in your hospital room, but out in the hallways, it's still super bright, or, like, there's people you can't ever really sleep in a hospital. There's always
Mhm.
people coming in and out, or, like, the feeling you get of the doctors rushing into someone's room and being like, "Oh, thank God it's not us. Thank God it's not
Yeah.
my room," but then you're, like, praying to God every prayer you have being like when it is you and it is your room with the person you love, and you're like, "Whatever I have to do to give up, I would do it right now to just save my person in this situation." My dad was also intubated, so, like, and same thing I think a lot with Dahlia is, like, he would be on it and then be off, and then be on it and then be off, and then just, like, it is a god awful feeling. Was your sister also when she was in her coma?
I think she was, yeah, and then she had to get, a trach
Mhm. So,
tube.
yeah, this was probably very personal for you.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot of things too that are related
Mhm.
to that, and I mean, like you said, like, staying in a hospital, like, I remember we had
Yeah.
to, like, push 2 chairs together and just lay on them, and they were, like, the uncomfortable hospital chairs,
Yeah.
and you just try to sleep on them, but you don't sleep because people are coming in and out, there's beeping, it's hard, and also just the times that you're in the hospital where you're like, something else has happened, where
Yeah.
it's like it's the holidays or
Yeah.
something where you weren't expecting to be in the hospital, and I think it's hard to not feel like we're missing out on everything, but it's
Yeah.
like you also wanna be there for them, but it is a hard thing, it is
Yeah.
hard to spend all those different days in the hospital and miss out on stuff, like, that's hard. That isn't easy, but, you choose to be with your loved ones, but that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you don't have a little bit of a ping of like, "Oh, I wish I could also be celebrating or doing whatever I was supposed to do."
Yeah. It's like I think people who've only spent an extensive amount of time in hospitals where you don't know if this is indefinite, um,
Mhm.
you lose sense of reality that's happening outside those walls. Your
Mhm.
world becomes that hospital room, weirdly enough, and I love that she acknowledges that, like, her and her husband had to become the experts on this disease, and she recounts so many conversations with different doctors and health professionals, and no knock against health professionals, they're doing the most they can, and they're all burnt out, and the system is kind of just already a hot mess to begin with, but, that's scary. I think she specifically says, like, "We became the experts on this disease about my daughter, and we didn't even know what we're doing." And, like,
Yeah.
what a hit in the face of, like, you have to be the advocate. You're the one who has to not teach, but, like, educate the doctors about the symptoms of your daughter, like, what to expect with this disease, and you're like, "But I'm not 100% sure if, like, what I'm saying is correct or if this is gonna affect her health whatsoever." I did, like I think, like, the 2 doctors that really stood out in the book was the one, young she calls her, like, the Doogie Howser doctor, like, the young woman that comes in, and she's like, "You don't need to worry about fixing Dahlia, her body's gonna tell us what she needs." And, like, I wish
Oh, yeah,
somebody
so
told me that.
yeah.
Like, we're telling y'all who are listening, but, like, if you're in the same situation, like, you're doing everything you can, um, but at the end of the day you you can't fix the sickness, like, their
Mhm.
body is gonna have to do that, and their body is gonna tell the doctors what they need, and so I felt that relief the same as I read that in the book of, like, "Man, I wish somebody told me that when I was in the hospital with my dad," having to, like, educate doctors on different things and think I was responsible for so much. Like, that one line, like, healed a little part of me, and then I liked the doctor, Pat O'Malley, what she was a specific type of doctor, a palliative doctor, but she's
Oh,
like
The one that she didn't like or she didn't want to meet for the
Yeah.
longest time?
Yeah, the one that was asking her, like, "Well, what are you gonna do with, like, DNR? What are your plans for this?" And I love that she's like, "You know what? I can tell this is not the time to talk about it. We're gonna put it in a box, and we're gonna put it on a shelf, and we'll come back to it when we're ready." And in some ways, that's basically compartmentalization, but
Yeah.
I like that she used that as, like, an imagery tool in the book of, like, the whole trach, debacle between her and the doctors because Jessica didn't want to have the trach surgery for her daughter because 'cause she'd be losing her voice, and she'd
Yeah.
be losing the ability to eat, and she was like, "How can you knowingly agree to that for your kid?" Like,
Yeah, it's really hard.
she's sedated right now, and how can a parent how can that still be the best case scenario with what she's going through? They keep saying no until, they
It has to
absolutely
happen,
had to
yeah.
do it, and then they were like, "Okay, this is to actually to save her life now, it's not a choice, it's a have to," but I appreciated, she brings up, these are some heavy issues I think people who are caregivers have to think about and make decisions on, and sometimes it's like you're put between a rock and a hard place, and you're like,
It's not
"Why?"
easy.
No, it's not.
It's definitely not easy, and yeah, I mean, you're put into impossible situations with this type of stuff, and it's really hard to know what is the right thing, if
Mhm,
there's ever really a right choice in that. So, yeah, I definitely for me, I thought the book it was such a breeze to read through, also because I
mhm,
just feel like it was kind of it was I don't know, I just, I feel like I could mirror so many things to
mhm.
my life with it and just, the amount of loss, and it was just really interesting for me to read and to go through all of it. It was there was a few points that, kind of brought up key memories that got me or I got that little, ping in my chest of, "Oh,
Yeah,
this is a sad moment." I think the dad passing away was one of them. Obviously, when any her sister passed away were, big moments for me, and but I didn't cry in this book,
mhm.
but I did, get that chest ping where I was like, "I might," but then I didn't actually cry. What about did you cry through any of this book?
No, but man, has it stuck with me. It's definitely somber in some parts, but I do think, she adds an element of, staying focused on the positivity and staying focused on the joy even when, the world was burning down around them. Um, and, it has, kinda changed my I don't know, my brain chemistry or my outlook a little bit to be like, "If this little girl can do it, then so can I." I don't have nearly the amount of obstacles in my life that she did, and yet she was still finding joy in her life. And I was like, "If she can do that, then I absolutely can." I'm taking it for granted, and, so I do think, with all that, it's also a very sweet reminder of, make sure that your life is being lived to the fullest.
Yeah, because you don't get to control the cards that you're dealt, and even if you
Mhm.
get really hard cards, it's like you still wanna know that there was moments of laughter and love and,
Yeah.
adventure and excitement, and that can be hard when there's so much just crap piling on and so much, death and uncertainty, hospitals, that really does get to you, for sure, that is such a hard thing, so I totally relate to that, but I think it was nice how even at the end of the book, she's just like there's a moment of just joy where it felt like if the world could just pause at this moment at
Mhm.
her bar mitzvah of just, this kind of joy that they're experiencing, and then I think she passed away, 4 years after her bar mitzvah, but she said it was just a hard time because they didn't know anymore, how there she
Mhm.
was through so many of those years, they hoped that she was there and they still treated her like she was there, but they just, didn't know, and it's just not a well-known disease to really know kind of the exact effects of it, I think, is what she said.
Yeah.
So, I think that must be, the hardest part is, taking care of someone and you don't know are they hearing you talk to them? Are they understanding it? Like, that part's really hard, but I did appreciate she's like, "This joy, like, I'm really appreciating, like, just this moment of happiness at a birth instead that we did it, and there's happiness." And then it's like, I think during the after that time, that's when her other sister passed away, and so there were still more things to come, but it's like, you have to appreciate that those joyful moments when you get them,
Yeah.
and not thinking, like, something bad is gonna happen, but, like, just life happens, and
Mhm.
yeah, if Dahlia can do it, I feel like everyone should take a card from that of find the joy, you things that you wanna do, and yeah, I try to do that too. It's hard sometimes, like, there's
It
definitely
is,
times where,
yeah.
like, I focus on that a lot, but it's not an easy thing to do because you can there's times where I'm like, "Oh my god, I haven't even gone out." Like, if I didn't have a dog, like, I'm sure there's times that I would, like, wouldn't go outside,
Yeah.
you know, I wouldn't talk to people, and, thankfully, I love him so much, I would never ever neglect him at any not even a chance, so, I go out, like, 3 times a day with him, and he goes outside, and I make sure that he runs and gets outside, and we go on long walks, so but I'm sure, if I didn't have him, who knows? Like, there
Yeah.
would have times that I stayed in longer, didn't socialize, so it's definitely easy to fall into that, but I think it's like you have to just keep fighting to find those things every day. Like, it is something that you have to do, and I don't think it's fair, especially when you're experiencing grief, that you have to do so much work, but that
Right,
grief is
yeah.
just it's really sad, it's an immense sadness,
Mhm.
it's like feelings, it's not fair, nothing's okay, and that's the hard part, but you really have to want that for your life and, like, want to still live a beautiful life. So, everyone channel Dahlia, and I know that this little girl can do it with a crazy degenerative disease, then you can too. And, so take it from her.
Yeah. Do you wanna read the father's letter?
Oh, yeah, the last bit we have of the book. So, for context, her sister, I think she was her younger sister. Is she younger?
I
I'm not
thought they
sure.
were both older than her.
I don't remember that part, but I should know that her name was Rachel, so like me, same name, but
Oh,
her
Rachel
her
was older. Rachel was
yeah,
older. She was the
okay.
oldest, I think.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I knew that Nomi was older than her, I wasn't sure about Rachel. But so she was looking through her old dad's stuff and then found a letter, and I think this was a letter to Jessica for her bar mitzvah, I think, is what I remember,
Yeah.
potentially. But the letter from her dad, and also I feel like he has, like, fancy writing. So, um, but the note said, "Be gentle always. The world is so raucous. There's so very much noise." I don't know if I put that part correctly, but do not add do not add to that noise. Instead, create a corner of quiet, of peace, and of grace. There are every day corners of beauty, and one day there will be a world of beauty. Our task is to encourage that world. That is not a burden, not at all, but a way of life, a perspective. These are not the words of a sermon, but of a father who loves you and wants the best for you, wants your happiness, and knows whence you come, hence where you are intended to go.
Oh,
And I thought it was sweet.
blushing.
Yeah, she said it was like a letter from the grave from her dad, and her dad was such a big supporter of her. Her last book was The Beach Read, where she also found letters from her dad, and that's a fictional story, but I'm like, "Where are the letters from my dad?"
Still waiting, still
Still waiting.
waiting.
Any day now, they'll show up. It's only been 10 years.
Yeah.
But I thought that was such a beautiful note that included. That was when I read that. It's very
Yeah.
sweet.
It's just
Do you have any
a great little reminder of that, especially when all of this to take that moment of peace and quiet and grace.
do you have any other last thoughts?
No, but I really loved the book. I am just very grateful to Jessica for sharing her experience. She did it so eloquently, and I feel better for reading the book. I think if you're a grieving person, if you're a grieving mother, if you're a caretaker, if you're a medical professional, if you're just a mom with a lot of love for your kids, like, this is such a great book to read.
Yeah. I feel like we should mention we were reached out to and given the chance to read the book, but there was no requirement to do anything. Just read the book. and do with it what we wish. So I appreciate that we were reached out to. We read the book. We really liked it. And we hope to have Jessica on our book club for a special book club episode soon. So stay tuned for that. We're also going to do a Substack feature of her as well. So a few things kind of featuring her and her story. We're really touched by her book and everything she's trying to do. So and I feel like when I spoke to her, we were I feel like things that me and Kendall talk about a lot, she also really agrees with. So I just felt like we're all kind of kindred spirits in how we see grief. So the thing that we're doing now is that we're giving our griefy scores of the book. And this is just kind of, I feel like, our way of saying how maybe like gut wrenching. To me, I see it as like gut wrenching of a
Mhm.
story to let you know, depending on where you are in your grief, if you're ready to read this or just like what to expect.
Mhm.
So, because I feel like everyone's grief story is beautiful, whether fictional, well, fictional maybe questionable, but like real grief stories, real grief stories, I feel like are beautiful. So we don't want to rate it in that type of way. We just want to rate it in like how the grief touched us in this
Mhm.
story.
Yeah.
So, what's your griefy score? I'm interested in hearing yours first.
Yeah, I think if I had read this right after my dad's passing, probably a 5 on heart-wrenchingness. I probably think every chapter would have made me weep. 'Cause same thing, I'd get those pings in my chest now. I say right now it's probably a 4. I do appreciate that she goes into the intricacies of, like, the medical journey that she went on with her daughter. So if that's where you are in your life right now, you might find that a little bit more, like, heavy for you, but I think, like, the story was really super beautiful, and yeah, but same thing, it didn't, like, ruin my day reading it, if that makes sense, like, it wasn't so heavy to read her grief story that I couldn't go on about my day, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'd say it was about a 4 too, because I feel like there is a lot of like the hospital elements and just like
Mhm.
the cons like the compounded grief and like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff that really pinged my chest, but it didn't make me cry. So I would say it's also a 4
Mhm.
because I think as much as she talked about the different things with Dahlia and other family members, she didn't talk about the like she didn't talk about it in the way that it was written in like Crying in H Mart, where it was
Yeah.
like extremely detailed,
Yeah.
where like it was like a stab in the chest. I feel like she mentioned things and you got a good idea, but it wasn't including the heart-wrenching details that I'm sure occurred constantly throughout this whole experience. So I
Yeah.
think that part makes it not like a 5. In
Yeah.
this book, it's like you're kind of alongside it, but not seeing the heavy, like the nitty-gritty heavy. Like, yes, obviously there's a lot of really heavy elements in there that are included, but not
Yeah.
the like, I'd say super traumatic bird's eye view of like seeing the hospital visits or the times that they're rushed in the hospital. That stuff is not really included. So just to give you like a different level of what to expect in the book, which was nice because I feel like reading Crying in H Mart, I was not expecting for it to be so detailed where I was like, holy shit, this is
Yeah,
rough.
like, so detailed
But
you could taste the food she's describing in the
yes.
book.
Yes, but then also when she described her mother's death, like that that correlated to that as
Yeah.
well. So that was intense. I feel like you just kind of really understood Dahlia's journey and how hard it was, but I couldn't like picture every single thing, which for me is fine because that part is really tough.
It is,
So
yeah. It is.
I I think for me, so just like you know what to expect reading this book. Also, there's a lot of like just hospital things. So if that gives you
Yeah.
any
What we call
sensitivities,
logistical grief
yeah,
and, like, the paperwork of it all. The plane
yeah.
thing, oh my god, I'm still thinking about the plane
Oh,
thing.
yeah, I totally forgot about that. That was just a start of everything.
Yeah, and to think, like I mean, I didn't have anything outrageous as that. I mean, fortunately, we were able to my dad was here, in town with me. I can't even imagine being in another state and then thinking, like, "How are we gonna get back to our other kids?"
Yeah, and her just, like, mentioning how I mean, how grateful she was that she had a support system of people to help out at the
Mm,
time, and that
all
she
her
like, a
friends
friend
that
her
supported her.
she had a friend of a friend that was able to get her jet approved, and that just shows, like, and she acknowledged, like, what a privilege that was, that
Yeah.
she knew people that could help out, and I think that's hard because, like, not everyone has those
Mhm.
connections, and it just also shows how easily you can be turned down, and it's like,
Yeah.
you just
And
need to know the right people,
how
and
messed up
that's
our
just a hard
healthcare
thing.
system
Yeah.
is.
That's just a hard thing to read sometimes. It's like, that could have been the game changer, and you just didn't know the right people, but thankfully for Dahlia, it worked out for her in that situation. That part was, like, a little rough. It's just like, I'm so happy for her, but it is hard because, like, so many people would not
Yeah.
get that opportunity. Any other last comments on?
No, I'm I'm just still, like, reeling from it and settling in it, and I'm happy to have read the book. I feel really impacted by it.
Yeah, it was a good book. We'll include in the show notes a link to her book so you can check it out. We're not, like, affiliate or anything. We're not, like, getting money off of it. We're just recommending the book because we actually liked it. So, yeah, so we're not making money off of that, just to be clear.
It's a
But we
good
will link the book.
resource
Yeah,
for your grief journey.
we'll link the book because we did enjoy it.
So if you want to stay included on our book club journey, we started a book club on Fable. So if you are a bookworm like us, Fable is an app where you can track your reading, but it's also where you can have book club conversations. So if you've enjoyed our episodes around the books, we invite you to find us on Fable. We are two girls with Grief Book Club. And we're going to be talking about our upcoming books and having in-depth conversations there. So you can check us out on Fable. That's Fable. You can also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Substack, where you can read our articles with other people in the grief community and learn more there.
You can also join our Facebook group. So we're starting a Facebook group since the holidays are coming up, for, like, a place for grievers to support each other and talk. And we've met so many more people, like, through comments and DMs
Yeah.
and emails. I just thought it was a great place for people to start connecting, because some people are telling us they're feeling isolated, not looking forward to the holidays, and we
Sharing
know, yeah,
advice.
and we know how hard the holidays are. So we wanted to create this space for you to be able to join, and we can all talk and share together and ask questions. And if you are listening to this or our other episodes, please rate and subscribe to our podcast. We really appreciate all the support so far, but rating and subscribing really helps us kind of get out there and boost listenership. So please do that. Oh, and share any episodes that you have found helpful. We really appreciate all of that. You can also email us at twogirlswithgrief@gmail.com if you have any questions, comments, book suggestions, anything like that. We would love to hear from you. We love every email that we receive, and just every time we get to talk to anybody that listens to podcasts or just in the grief space. It's been a really great journey. We have to actually choose our next book, so stay tuned for that. We don't know yet. It's Kendall's pick, though, so it could be
It's my
dark.
pick, and I don't know what I'm going to pick. So
Just know Kendall leans dark, so
lean dark. I'm sorry about it,
yeah,
but sometimes it needs to be done.
prepare yourself. But we'll announce that in the next episode. Maybe we'll just launch with the next book in the first episode.
Yeah, surprise.
Stay tuned until next Monday. Oh, and the next episode we'll also be together, so
Yay! So excited.
that's gonna be crazy. So stay tuned for Kendall and Rachel meet each other in person for the first time. Which, yeah, if people don't know, we haven't met each other in person. So
Yeah, we do this all virtually. I'm in Texas and she's in California, so we're finally gonna meet and make some videos and do some
yes,
podcast recordings.
you're gonna get sick of us just being everywhere with our faces together. And we're gonna figure out, we don't know exactly how to do an episode together yet, but we will figure it out. So
Yeah, we're learning. This
we're
has all
learning.
been trial and error.
And if you haven't noticed, I have a nicer microphone. I apologize. My last microphone was also, like, echoing, and I don't know why it just started doing that, and I didn't know how to fix it. So hopefully I sound amazing now.
I think
Because
you do.
so hopefully, because I can't tell though, when I didn't hear myself echoing in the other episodes, but when I'm editing and I'm like, don't know how to get that out of it yet. So, I was like,
Yeah.
it's just there." But I'm hoping that this one does not echo because this is, like, a legit microphone, so
Mhm.
hopefully there's no echo there. We're done yapping for this episode, so toodaloo. See you
See you
next
next
week.
week. Bye.
Bye.